The first verse is about the individuals who contributed ideas to give us our basic understanding of cells and specifically cell theory. So the first two lines of the song are, "Well, I have a theory Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with, that all living things have basic cells. Anton believes it." All right, so let's talk about what this means. The first line, "Well, I have a theory Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with." So Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow, they were the ones we put together their ideas about cells, and that became cell theory. And the fundamental principle of cell theory is that all living things are made up of these tiny little cells. So the second line, that all living things have basic cells, which is true, Anton believes it. So Anton Leeuwenhoek was actually the first person to look at pond water under a microscope and see cells in those little organisms in the pond water. So he was the first one to actually see animal cells. All right, so here's how we're going to demonstrate the first two lines of the song. All right, the first line is, "Well, I have a theory Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with." So I have a theory. I'm going to scratch my head like I'm thinking about something. I have a theory that, and then Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow came in history way before us. So let's pretend they're behind us. So Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with, and to agree with, we're going to pull them to the forefront here. So I have this theory, and these guys believe it. So I have a theory that, and Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with it. All right, that all living things. So we do a sweeping. All living things have basic cells. All right, so these all living things are made up of these little cells. All right, and then Anton Leeuwenhoek, let's pretend he's over there, and again, he's the first one who saw animal cells in pond water. So Anton believes it. All right, so all living things have basic cells. Anton believes it, because he does. He was the first one to actually see animal cells. All right, so the next part of the song, it says, "The first to see it, Hooke was wowed by a cork when he put it under a microscope." All right, so now this is going back a little further, because Anton Leeuwenhoek saw the first animal cells in the mid to late 1600s, and before that, Robert Hooke was sort of the first one to coin the term cells, because he was the first to see these cells, really. So he took a piece of cork and put it under a microscope, and what he saw was the first example of plant cells. So he looked at the cork under a microscope and noticed these tiny little rooms in this cork, and he called those cells because they looked like rooms. All right, so here's how we're going to demonstrate that part of the song. All right, so we just did Anton believes it, and then the first to see it, so we're going to point to our eyes here, the first to see it, and we're going to pretend that Robert Hooke is now sitting over on this side of us. So we're flanked by all these famous people that had to do with our understanding of cells. So the first to see it, and then Hooke was wowed, and our brain's going to explode. Hooke was wowed by a cork, and then we can have one of our hands turn into, like we're holding a cork when he put it under a microscope. All right, so he saw that cork under the microscope and said, "Those look like cells." All right, so again, the first to see it, Hooke was wowed by a cork when he put it under a microscope. All right, so the whole thing, again, slowly, from the beginning. Well, I have a theory that Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow agree with, that all living things have basic cells. Anton believes it. The first to see it, Hooke was wowed by a cork when he put it under a microscope. All right, good. So let's go ahead and try this with the music. Oh, also, there's a part in the beginning of the song that has some whistling and some snapping. You can do whatever you want for that part of the song. I'm just going to kind of snap along with it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hooke agree with, that all living things have basic cells, yeah, and Tom believes it, the first to see it. Hooke was wowed by a cork when he put it under a microscope. Plants have cellular walls. Alright, good. Let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I have a theory, Schleiden, Schwann, and Hooke agree with, that all living things have basic cells, yeah, and Tom believes it, the first to see it. Hooke was wowed by a cork when he put it under a microscope. Plants have cellular walls. Alright, good. So that was the first verse.